What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Altitude Show. I'm your host, Dave Brinker. The Altitude Show is brought to you by Mountain Tough Fitness. The Mountain Tough Fitness app has made me so much stronger over the last year. I started doing it about a year ago, and my mind, my body, I've never been in better shape. I used to have a lot of lower back problems, and they have virtually disappeared as I've strengthened my body through these workouts, in addition to the other stuff that I do. Mountain Tough has programs, whether you're a beginner or you're an expert, you're an athlete. All you got to do is get their app off the App Store. Use my code Altitude20, you get 20% off, and you can start using this app every day. You don't need a lot of equipment for what I do, because I do the Minimal Gear Daily, which is a new workout every day. Yesterday, it was like a block and a dumbbell, and that was it. You don't need to have an expensive gym membership or anything. So go to the App Store, get Mountain Tough app, and use Dave20 for 20% off. Today, we have Dr. Hillary Lampers on the podcast, and I think she's just now signing in because I see her.
Hi, Dave.
And I'm super excited to have her on again. How you doing, Hillary?
I'm doing good. How are you doing today?
Sorry you had to download all the things to get on this program.
No, actually, I used Riverside last year for a little while, but they were in beta testing, and it was just, we had way too many problems. So it's probably improved by now, but I realized I didn't have Chrome on this computer, so I had to download it because I think they just use that. So that's okay.
How are you?
I probably should go back to it, but I am doing really good. I am on break this week due to the holidays, so it's kind of nice to just sleep in until you want to get up and have days where you don't have scheduled patients and stuff like that. So doing good.
Do you ever really get a day off, though? Because you have more than just your doctor job, right?
No, I never do. I actually woke up this morning and I read a little bit. I usually get up and work out and sit in the sauna and then get ready for work. That's usually what I do in the morning. Or I get up really early, about 4, because I tend to wake up really early. So I get up and I do work that I wasn't able to get done the day before, especially if things are on my brain, because I figured with myself, the more stuff is on my brain, the more it stresses me out. So if I just wake up and I'm ready to get up, I will get up and either work out or I will do paperwork, which sounds very exciting. But this morning I woke up and actually read a book that my daughter bought me for Christmas, like a novel, which I rarely get to do. And then I did some work for our other businesses, for social media and stuff like that. But to me, that's a relaxing day where I don't have to get in the car and drive to work and see patients. So
It's nice, though, to get the things that you don't want to do out of the way first thing in the morning, as opposed to putting them off. Because I found, at least with myself, in the afternoon is not a time for me to do things that I've been dreading. It's only a time I can do things that I actually really enjoy. So me and my wife were just talking about how, like, paperwork for me, I hate. So it's almost like doing a hard workout first thing. It's like, I just got to get it done and get it over with so I can stop thinking about it. And then I can work on creative things, which is really what I like doing. Right. So,
yeah, I totally agree. I'm a pumpkin after work. I am not going to work out. There are some classes I will go to. If it's like a class situation at like a studio or something, I will do it. But if I'm just coming home, there will be no working out, really. And I've just looked at a computer all day and I don't want to look at a computer anymore. So really any type of paperwork or work that requires me to be on the computer is just not going to get done. So the best time of morning, is like everybody's sleeping. Nobody else in my family is a morning person. So I love getting up early. My brain works the best. It's on my brain. I get it done with, like you said, even if it's a workout. It's like the workout gets done. It's done. I can say I did it. And my day just goes a lot smoother.
Even Ryan Lampers is a morning person?
He's only a morning person if he's trying to get your butt out of a sleeping bag. Mule deer hunting. He's up before anybody, making coffee, making food, trying to get you up, and then you're out of the tent. But at home, he's changing a little bit as he gets older, but he's more of a night owl. And I like to go to bed by 9. And he likes to do research at 9. Like on he's on his hunt apps, and he's watching goat videos on YouTube, and he's doing the carnivore diet right now. So he's up watching carnivore videos, but yeah, so that's when he does his research. I just can't have anything to do with that.
Are you are you also doing the carnivore?
I am not. A little bit of backstory, I think, why Ryan's doing it is he did a fast. He did a 3-day water fast a couple weeks ago at the beginning of December. Actually, he went out in the hills by himself, stayed in a tent, and he did a 3-day water fast. And he's going to share his experience with that at some point. And then that just kind of, he's been doing a lot of research on it, mainly because he's always had blood sugars that have been high. And we can never figure out if it's a genetic thing, if it's, we do know there's some genetic. So his grandmother died of diabetes, and he's always had this just more elevated blood sugar than, like, say, I actually have low blood sugar. So I'm the exact opposite. I probably don't eat enough, and my blood sugar gets too low, and I'm sort of a anxious, stressy person, so I'm more cortisol driven. He's not, he's pretty even keel, even his personality, and just even the way he acts. Like, he eats sugar. He's not like hyped up on sugar. His personality is kind of always consistent. So it's hard to tell, like, are you feeling off right now? Is your blood sugar off? And he says he just has a very difficult time telling that. But in routine blood work, we have struggled with his blood sugars. And so we got him a CGM, and he is doing the carnivore because he wants to see what it's going to do. Him and Mark from Treeline are doing it, and they're doing it for 40 days. And really, he's trying to see what it's doing. And the great thing about the CGM and the continuous glucose monitor, you can actually watch what is happening to your blood sugar second by second. And if you do have dysregulated blood sugar, in the old days, the diabetics had to poke their finger all the time and constantly be putting it in their glucose monitor to see what it was. And now they have these great devices that it's especially wonderful for type 1 diabetics, right? Because it goes in and it's constantly monitoring their blood sugar, so they can tell whether they're high or low.
How does that thing work? Is there like,
they need to eat?
Obviously there's something that's stuck in you, I assume. I've never seen one of these CGMs.
Yeah, so they're just like a little round thing, and they have what looks like a needle that comes out the back of it, but it's not an actual needle, but it looks like it. It's a monitor. And then there's an applicator that forces it through your skin, and then it like attaches into your arm or wherever you put it. It looks violent, but you can't even feel it, which is the craziest thing. So it slides in, and then it's attached to you for about, depending on the monitor you have, I think the sensors have to be changed every 2 weeks or something. The one we have, I think, is a 2-week sensor. And then it's hooked to an app on your phone, and it's constantly reading your blood sugar. And it gives you readings like when you're eating, right after you eat, after you exercise, when you're sleeping. And it's given us the carnivore diet. I can't even believe how stable and normal his blood sugar is on it. And of course, it was just Christmas, right? And so everybody's like, well, I'm just going to cheat on Christmas. And the spiking that was going on just with having a dinner with carbohydrate in it, and we're talking like some stuffing, some squash, maybe a little bit of white potato. He really ate very little carb, but then he had some dessert, right? My mother brought this beautiful like cake thing over, and he had some of that. Oh my gosh, the spikes that were happening when he was eating just a regular meal with any carbohydrate in it was pretty drastic. So I think it's giving him really good information as to what carbs do for him. Now, it's interesting. I wore a CGM for about a month. This was over a year ago, but I wore it because I was having extremely low blood sugars on fasting draws, and I was a little worried about that. And my CGM, pretty much with everything I ate, was pretty consistent, except there were a few things that stood out. One was corn chips. Every time I eat corn chips, I'd get a massive blood spike. So that's interesting. So I don't really eat corn chips or corn after that experience. I would have low blood sugar drops with stress, especially at work or in a situation where I was put on the spot. Like I was at an educational seminar and I had to get up and talk, like any kind of adrenaline thing where you have to get up and talk, and my blood sugar would drop. And the CGMs will beep at you. So if your blood sugar gets too high, there's a range you're supposed to stay in. It gets too high or too low, especially if it's danger zone, it starts beeping, like your phone starts going beep, 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 beep. And I was like in the middle of a workshop and my CGM started beeping at me. And I think it's because I had had caffeine without food. And I always know caffeine's not my friend. And so I stay away from caffeine. But I, with carbs, really, really different readings. So I think it's useful information to help you see, especially if you do have any family history of diabetes, you're going to the doctor and your hemoglobin A1C is like borderline high all the time. And your insulin may be normal, but your hemoglobin A1C is borderline high all the time. Your fasting blood sugar in the morning is always high. I think the CGM, or you're having hypoglycemia, like lots of low blood sugar. I think the CGM is a great option for you to figure out how to feed yourself, basically.
Yeah. For someone with, I think I have low blood. It's been a while since I measured it, but there was a point when one of my tests came back low blood sugar, and I struggle with energy. Like I feel like I have some sort of fatigue issue, where I'm 3 to 4 naps a week minimum.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so it would be really interesting. I actually might get one of those just to see kind of. And I'm playing with different. Not I don't want to call them diets, nutrition plans right now myself. I'm definitely going to try the carnivore. I eat pretty close to carnivore already, but it's not strict. In January, I have a friend that I do jujitsu with who's been really into just tracking macros for the last 2 years. That's all he does, is track his macros religiously, and he's had tremendous success with that. So in January, he's getting me all up to date on this, and in January I'm going to be really strict about tracking my macros and my planning my meals and all these things, and see how that works for me in terms of energy. And then maybe in February or March, I might try. I'm going to try the carnivore, and I kind of want to see what works for me and my body, but because I do have those energy highs and lows. So it'd be interesting to see what Ryan finds with that carnivore diet. It's so intriguing to me because I love meat. I don't love vegetables very much. I like them, whatever, they're okay, but I love a steak, right? And all these people are having so much success on this carnivore diet. It gets bashed, but what's your opinion on it, just from an outsider's perspective? What is it that they're canceling all the bad stuff out that they're having the success? Is it why do we think we have to eat vegetables and fruit?
Well, I think it probably goes back to our teeth and to our digestive tracts. So we have omnivorous teeth, which means we have teeth that can break down meat. We also have teeth that can break down plants, right? So that's one clue that I don't think we were designed to just eat meat. We also have very long digestive tracts that take a long time for food to digest and absorb. And, that's probably another reason that says, plants, which are actually pretty hard to digest in a lot of ways. And so is protein, but the digestive tract would probably play into that. I think that the modern diet is just really harsh on our metabolic systems. And what I mean by that is that we just eat a lot of processed food, and we are probably not getting enough really good we have a lot of people that are nutrient deficient when we live in a very excess food environment. And so I think our food is very deficient in micronutrients. And then I also think it's the ratio of what people are eating their macronutrients. And we just, in general, eat a lot more carbs than we eat protein and or fat. And if we are eating fat, we tend to be eating the wrong type of fat. And the protein, because of the digestion process that happens with protein, I think a lot of people are sort of steered away from eating the adequate amount of protein for their bodies because they don't have good digestive fire. So they can't actually... Oh, whoops. Oh, no, sorry. Oh,
You're okay.
geez.
I got you.
That was...
I got you.
Okay, let me turn notifications off here.
Oh, you're fine.
My daughter has her best friend calls constantly.
Yeah, we have we have those same things at our house.
Yeah. Hold on a second. How do I turn that off?
How dare you get messages and texts when you're on my podcast?
It is seriously like nonstop between these two kids. They call each other, and it shows up on all my things. I'm like, why?
Yeah,
are showing
Apple's
up
that way.
Let me just go to. Geez, on my Mac, how do I do this?
Well, while you're doing that,
oh yeah, hold on. Let me just text Ryan and tell him not to let her call anymore.
Before Hillary and I go on, I have to mention the Altitude Show is brought to you by GoHunt.com. Hillary mentioned how Ryan's always doing research. I feel like the most successful hunters on planet Earth they approach hunting differently, intelligently. I think that's one thing that we always talk about, how, getting ripped and shooting your bow and all these things. But if you look behind the scenes at these successful hunters like Hillary's husband, they spend a tremendous amount of time doing research. And one of the places that you can do that, the best place in my opinion, is at GoHunt.com. They have so many tools, from the mapping program to the articles that Cheryl Kreitzer and Brady Miller and others put out, to all the drawing odds, statistics. You can go deep, and you should, because now is the time of year to start thinking about next year. Go to GoHunt.com, become an insider, use my code Altitude, and you will not regret it. It is absolutely awesome. All right, there you go. That's my ad. Are you? And now Hillary's done.
I'm so sorry.
You're fine.
We have little best friends, and they just FaceTime each other all the time, and it's like
it's all good. Where were we?
Okay. So I was just saying, also, when it comes to protein, a lot of people have really poor digestive fire, which means they can't break the protein down adequately into peptides and then into amino acids. And so they just feel kind of bloated and gross and heavy. And, then you add in leaky gut to that in the intestine, where large proteins that aren't being digested appropriately are crossing the intestinal barrier, and then you're having autoimmune reactions, inflammatory reactions, etc. So I think that that's the thing. And a lot of these carbs, they digest really easily, actually, and they turn into glucose quite rapidly. And that could be anything from a starchy white potato to a Twinkie, right? Like, I mean, the carbohydrate realm is just huge as far as what. And you can have, greens do that, lettuce does that, tomatoes do it, any veggies do it, even whole grains are doing that, like quinoa and rice and noodles and whatever people eat. So no matter if you eat gluten-free, you eat gluten, you eat whole grain, you don't eat whole grain, those are all considered carbohydrates that turn into glucose. Fruit does the same thing. So fruit is fructose, and it breaks down into glucose.
Is there any difference in fruit? So with fruit, is there any difference between eating a whole bunch? This is something I get confused on. They say, when you eat a bunch of fruit, you're getting so much sugar. It's no different than just having a bunch of candy or something. And I'm like, well, isn't there a difference between sugars, processed sugars, and the sugars you get from fruit? Or to your body, does your body react the same to that?
Well, I of course. I mean, fruit is a natural food, and how I've always put food is, if you think you should eat it or not, think about was it actually made for you to eat? And an apple is not made for you to consume. An apple is meant to spread its seed, and so an orange is meant to spread its seed, right? Cucumbers are meant to spread their seed. Peas are meant to spread their seed. These are not foods. I mean, they've been cultivated over thousands of years through agriculture, obviously. And then even before that, with wild harvesting, people figuring out what foods were edible, for one, and what they did for the body. But again, unless you live in a jungle environment or you live close to the equator where you have kind of year-round temperate climates and you can grow avocados and oranges and mangoes all the time, most places of the world, these foods are very seasonal. And here in North America, especially in indigenous cultures, there's very harsh times of the year in the winter. And there's some indigenous cultures that, live in the Arctic, and they are not really getting any warm time of the year. And so we know that the colder environment that you live in, you need more fat and you need more protein. The warmer environments that you live in, you can handle more carbohydrate because it's warmer. And so your body can digest those foods easier. And usually people tend to be more active. So thinking about glucose as a fuel source, you're going to be moving around, you're going to be burning up glucose. If you're in the middle of winter, unless you're having to move, and migrate or something, which usually migration was not done in the winter,
Right.
then you're not expending a lot of energy. And you need protein and fat to just keep you warm. And if you think about the only heat source back in the day was like a fire, your energy was pretty precious. So today, fruit is obviously very natural and it's very healthy, but it's what we call a high glycemic carb. And so it does have a lot more activity with glucose. And
So
again,
there's many good things about it. In other words, it's like a double-edged sword. You're getting a lot of sugars, but you're also getting a lot of vitamins and other things you need to go about your day, right? That's why fruit's kind of like
and you're getting polyphenols, you're getting antioxidants, you're getting antioxidants like zeaxanthin and lanthan, for vision and eyes. Blueberries, have anthocyanins in them, these polyphenols that help with skin and hair and eyes, and they have a lot of importance. The other thing too is that I think in this day and age, probably eating healthy fruit once in a while, maybe not tons of healthy fruit, but I think it's beneficial because you need antioxidants to eliminate toxins in the body. And if you don't have enough antioxidants, then the insults that we receive on a daily basis, either from pollution, poor food, contaminated water, heavy metals, mycotoxins, viruses, all those things, you need these antioxidants within the body and that also come from out the body for your food to help you fight those things. And they support the immune system. And today we have such an onslaught of plastics and estrogens and, pollution and EMFs and all the things that our ancestors, they obviously had heavy metals and they had hygiene issues and they had viruses and they had bacteria and they had smallpox. I mean, there's still places in the world that have a lot of this stuff. So this is why antioxidants in these foods are actually really important. Now, meat does have some antioxidants as well, and it has amino acids that are really important for the immune system and for fighting infection and for, your eyes and your skin and your hair. Obviously, you need amino acids just to regenerate all those tissues, to regenerate your brain, to regenerate your organs. And so we do know that over time, if you are protein deficient, and you will see this like Alone, Ryan loves to watch Alone, that's like his favorite show, and you will see what happens to people after they have been protein deficient for a while. They lose weight quite rapidly, right? They can be eating mashed berries and they can be eating this, but after a while, boy, they're going to starve.
Yeah, the biggest thing I noticed on that show that we were just talking. Who was I just talking? My in-laws about this. It's kind of gross to talk about, but in nature, if hunters, if they hit an animal, let's say they shoot an animal and they have to leave it overnight, and unfortunately the coyotes find it and the birds before they do, which has happened to me and many other people I know. What you'll notice is the coyotes start at the butt, and then and then they work their way up into the guts. And the birds tend to do the same thing. Actually, the birds will eat more of the meat too, but coyotes and other predators, they eat the guts and all the things that we consider gross that we actually get rid of. The first thing you do when you gut a deer is you get rid of the butt and the guts. And that's like the first thing these animals want. So when I watch Alone, I also notice it's the people that find all those nutrients. I mean, meat's great, obviously, but those people fail if they're just eating lean meat. They have to be eating like the fish with the fat and the other things, or like the content of the or like organs. So
well, that's where all the micronutrients are. So if you eat liver and you eat intestine and you eat whatever, you have lots of B vitamins, highly concentrated fat soluble vitamins like vitamin D, A, and K. That's where you're going to find a lot of that. Muscle meat is mainly just amino acids, and muscle meat, that's why, like with the carnivore diet, you add fat into it because you need those fat soluble vitamins. Unless you're eating a ribeye. If you're eating a ribeye every night, then you have a lot of fat on that ribeye, then you're getting those fat soluble vitamins. And if you're eating eggs and you're eating fish and you're eating fish roe and you're eating all that. So that's why the animals do that, because they need those micronutrients, especially, and they need the fat in order to stabilize blood sugar for one, and to decrease the absorption of glucose. So the more fat you eat, you will slow the absorption of glucose so you can have it hang around longer. So it's kind of it's a way to sustain the food supply that you are eating as far as calorie use. And so fat does help with that. But yeah, it's interesting. The animals they're really smart. They are going off instinctual need. Whereas we, as children, if you've ever had a baby, so babies, they sort of go off instinctual need, right? Like they know they need mom's milk, and that's going to keep them alive. And then at some point you've got to introduce solid foods to them. Well, what is like the first food? It's since like the 50s, we've been giving babies, it's like rice cereal or something. It's like, who needs rice cereal straight to their brain right when they get their first food? What they need is they need those macronutrients. So like liver and fish roe and fat and avocados. But we don't do that in this culture. We just give them these highly processed foods, and we start making them glucose addicted. And it's easy to do because the first taste buds that you develop as a baby are your glucose or your sweet taste buds. And the interesting thing is, like, if you give a baby the first foods, if you give them a bitter food, they're like, right? There's certain tastes like sour and bitter that they'll spit it out but if you give them like fatty meat, or you give them fish roe, or you give them avocado, or you give them any of the liver, maybe not liver, but something fatty. Liver's gross. But
yeah.
But they like it, and they
it's good for you
eating it because it's like so nutrient dense, and those babies' brains are just, we are the only animal that's born that is completely 100% dependent on our parents for quite a long time before our brain is developed enough for us to be dependent on our own. And the brain is almost all fat. And so the foods these babies needs to accelerate brain growth is fats. And we just have it backwards in this country. And then we wonder why throughout our lives, everybody is attracted to carbs and wants to eat sugar and even fruit. Kids want to eat lots of fruit because we feed kids lots of fruit. We don't feed them these healthy fats and some fruit and, good protein. We're feeding them like tons of fruit, tons of carbs, tons of glucose. Fruit just turns into glucose. So, people say, oh, my kid won't eat that. And I have the same problem. Like, I've got a really picky one. My youngest daughter's super picky. She doesn't really like animal products. She has a hard time with them. I don't know why. But if you start them out, it's just hard. It's hard to get them away from that glucose. So if I had any recommendation to parents, and I'm always on social media, looking through a lot of the people that I follow are like homestead people and off the grid people and women that have like 8 kids, and somehow they're able to feed them all like super nutrient dense food, and they have time to do it. I don't know. And I just watch it and I just think
we are in a constant battle over at our place with our kids. I mean, I feel like my wife worked really hard to introduce those good things early. Like I thought I was a little crazy at the time because I was like young and dumb, but she worked really hard to make sure that she introduced all those healthy things. But somehow, our youngest, this is, you'll love this. Our youngest, he will eat. We'll go to the sushi place, and he will gorge on everything from octopus to squid to eel, roe. Loves it all, but he won't eat cheddar cheese, and he won't eat like potatoes, French
Great.
fries. So actually, it turned out pretty good. He turned out okay. My other ones, like, oh my gosh, it's just my middle son. He loves junk, and then my daughter, she won't eat meat other than maybe some chicken and a little bit of fish sometimes, but she won't eat red meat. I don't know where I failed there. Maybe it's like some subconscious
Sometimes with
like
kids
rebellion
too, it's
from dad's
texture.
hunting.
Yeah, sometimes with kids too, it's a texture thing. So my youngest daughter, that's kind of her thing. It's like an egg is like sort of weird texture, and like meat, when you chew it, there's a weird texture. So it's like things that are easy to chew and don't have this strange feeling in the mouth. Sometimes kids are going with that too. And that's when your kid, you may notice it's your more sensitive kid. It's your kid that's got more sensory things. They're really sensitive to lights and sounds and overdoing it. And they also have these kind of weird food aversions where if it's got a weird like sensation in their mouth, they won't eat it. And that's pretty common today. I think in a lot of ways we've created that in this culture by the foods we are feeding our children. And sensory integration is brain stuff. And a lot of these kids had nutrient deficiencies in utero, and they were exposed in utero, and they have heavy metals, and they have parasites, and they have all these things, and they're just sensitive to everything. So you take them into an environment like our youngest daughter, we go to the Hunt Expo. She lasts about an hour in there, and then she's having a panic attack. She's got to leave. It's too many people. She doesn't like the lights and the noise. She's got to have quiet. She's kind of a homebody. She likes to go out once in a while, but when she does, she likes to be home in her safe place. She takes after Ryan a lot like that. He's kind of the same way. But
I was going to say,
some kids are like that, and they just have all those sensitivities. So those are the children that you should really be focusing on, making sure if they're not going to eat the food you want, that you're supplementing them with good fats and maybe the cod liver oil, giving them fish oils, giving them protein shakes, getting good protein powder, and making B vitamins and vitamin D for sure, vitamin A, vitamin K. Make sure they're taking those supplements or trying to slip those into their food if they won't eat some of those healthier foods. So
is Ryan, with his carnivore diet, is he supplementing?
Not really. I mean, he's supplementing with salt, so you have to supplement quite a bit of salt when you do the carnivore diet. And then I don't know. I think he's just trying to keep it as simple as he can.
So he doesn't take a multivitamin or anything?
Not right now, but he's only been doing it like a week. He's not a pro at it. So he may...
What's your opinion on multivitamins? Is that something that you and your family...
Well, I mean, I sell multivitamins. I have a supplement company, but we don't sell one right now, but we have one coming out. So we have a whole new product lineup coming out after the first, which is very exciting because it's been years in the making. And we do have a multi in there. I'm always a big proponent of food, but again, this whole conversation about how poor our food supply is, I think supplementation for some people is important. I think for teenagers, I think for children, it can be important depending on what they will and won't eat. I think for hormonal health, it's very important in this day and age due to stress and due to exposures and antioxidant capacity and helping to support the brain, especially children who are at school all day and their brains, they need so much energy for their brain. And they may not be getting it through food. I mean, my kids kind of eat like birds sometimes. And you know what? My youngest daughter, they get 15 minutes for lunch. So half the time she comes home, her lunch is half eaten. And I'm like, why didn't you eat lunch? And I'm already giving her like half a serving. And she says, because I didn't have enough time to eat it. It's 15-minute lunch. So are you kidding me? It's just weird
Right.
to me. The children aren't even getting time to eat. And then when they do get food, they're getting tons of sugar treats.
Oh my God.
Candy. School is like sugar pusher. I mean, we just have problems with it because it's like constant birthdays, cupcakes, candy. Then the holidays start. And I don't know about you, but like from Halloween to Easter, it's just like nonstop sugar. In, and that's what they want. And now we're guilty, I let her get some candy here and there, but since Halloween, it's like I don't even have to buy it. I basically have to take it away and then hide it or get rid of it, garbage it, or give her rations or whatever. So that's another thing. So much sugar intake is causing nutrient deficiency. So yes, do I think supplementation? Yeah. Now, if you were like our garden, we were eating out of the garden, we're eating wild game, we have bear fat, we have organ meats. Do you need to supplement? As long as you know your soil's good and you're getting those micronutrients and et cetera, like, do you need to? Probably not. Probably not. I would say that would be a perfect world where you didn't have to supplement. But again, that's not the case anymore. Right. And then there's places in the world where people are really malnourished, and there's war-torn areas of the world where people don't have food. And, they sometimes live on what they can, and or these aid organizations will bring in supplemental foods where they're supplemented with vitamin A and fat-soluble vitamins and making sure they're getting macronutrients and stuff just so that they can not die.
It's so crazy to me that, like, as I've gotten older and wiser and like I've opened my eyes more, when you're young, I feel like, at least for me, like I grew up around everything you're saying, from my grandfather and my dad, but somehow I lost touch with that. And in my late teens, 20s, even early 30s, you just don't realize how much you're trashing your body. In my late teens and up to my mid 20s, it was alcohol, being drunk 3-4 nights a week with my buddies. And then, you wake up the next day and you hit McDonald's and get an Egg McMuffin and a hash brown and an apple pie. And you feel like garbage for years, but you don't realize it because you always feel like garbage. So you actually don't know what it feels like to feel good.
Yeah.
And then in my 30s, just realizing that your body doesn't just stay fit like it used to when you're young, or like trim when you're young. Your body's just different. And then you realize, like, shit, I really have to actually proactively work on this thing. Otherwise it gets out of hand. And now in my 40s, same thing on that front. Alcohol is basically almost completely out of my life. And now I walk around, like, even just in the grocery store, or like the convenience store is the best example. And I look around and I'm like, what have we done to ourselves? Like, there is not, like, if I want to stop, like, because I have to drive a lot. So like I have to eat. I can't always eat at home. So like I drive in these rural areas. And I'm like, shit, man, I'm hungry. I need a snack. I just want some freaking nuts. That's all I want. Nothing on them, just some almonds. And I'll stop at a convenience store, and there is literally not one thing in the damn store that is healthy. Not one. And it's, in fact, 95% of it's not even remotely healthy, right? It's like energy drinks and Sour Patch Kids and beer and whatever else, It's like, God, no wonder we're all fat and unhappy.
I mean, it's kind of like in this situation, causation equals correlation. I mean, did I say that right? Like, correlation equals causation. It's just, it's like we have to the point polluted ourselves to the point that we think these foods are normal. So this is when I'm trying to get a patient to understand, like, making different food choices. Most people are having the experience that you're having. They've been eating these foods for a long time. They're eating convenience foods all the time because life is busy. Life is stressful. Nobody's cooking as much as they used to anymore. They're not prepping their food. And they're on the go. And we see this. I mean, I drive by the McDonald's every day on my way home from work, and literally the line is around the building all the time,
right?
All day long, nonstop. And that's every single fast food restaurant in Bozeman, Montana has a line like that.
Yep.
And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, people are busy. People have multiple children. They're running from activity to activity. People are working late. People don't have time to cook. And we're guilty of that too. Sometimes like, you want to get a pizza? I mean, I'm going to be late and Ryan's working.
Yeah.
And, okay, I'll get a pizza. But like, I have the privilege of being able to go to like Bridger Brewing and buy like a bison sausage pizza with like organic tomato sauce on it and gluten free if I want to, right? Like I have that privilege. But you go to a lot of places in the country where you're, especially rural America. So I think it's both. I think it's urban America and rural America, depending on where you live. I mean, there's food deserts. And there is literally nothing but convenience food. I mean, you've been to some of these small towns in Montana. Wow.
Oh, it's crazy. Like you can stop by the store and gamble, grab your alcohol, and eat your pizza pocket all in one place. It's like all the worst things for you.
I know. And it's like the stereotype of the rural America is these like guys hanging out at the bar all day. And, the farmers hanging out at the bar and whatever. But I mean, literally that's like what there is. There's like a convenience store and a bar. And some of these towns don't even have gas stations. I mean, their grocery store is more like a convenience store. Their produce is really poor. Anyways, so this is what's happening. So when I try to get my patients to change, I just say, listen, if you were to walk into that gas station or to that convenience store and you were to look at everything in there, how much of that food in there was not meant for you to eat? Like, was not purposely made for you to consume? Zero.
Almost, Zero. Yeah, almost all of it. There's nothing in there.
Unless you're in a store where there's like an orange or an apple or a banana or a salad, but then the salad's been dressing all over it, put in a plastic box that was meant for you to eat. So is that as healthy? But like most people would be like, yeah, nothing,
Well, and I feel like we've fell also, because I catch myself doing this. We fell into a realm where we're like, okay, there's nothing in here that's healthy. I'm going to get an energy bar. Those are healthy. They're called energy bars. And I go over there and you start reading the freaking ingredients in those things. And you're like, dude, these are like glorified candy bars with some protein in them.
Yeah, we struggle because we're trying, we love food and we of course do our freeze drying and we do everything that we can. Ryan makes all his own meals for the backcountry. And we're coming out with a jerky because jerky, like my kids will eat jerky. So my youngest daughter loves jerky. And so we created a jerky that's got wild game, organ meats in it, not all the crap in it. But yeah, it's like in a, I had to put it in like a plastic thing, single jerky thing. You can put it in your kid's lunch, but like trying to just even find a healthy jerky. Right? That's really hard to do without all the preservatives and all the junk and the sugar and the horrible salts and the nitrates and all that. And then, coming up with a healthy carb solution, protein.
What is a healthy carb solution?
A waffle, but it's like we had to come up with a waffle that's like supposedly healthy, but but it's still like made for you to eat. And that's the thing is like, it's just what we really want to get through to people is like, try as much as you can to buy whole foods. Eat as much whole foods as you can. If you live in a food desert, geez, I'm really sorry. That sucks. In the winter, you probably should grow a garden, and save your can. We used to can. We still do a little bit, but not as much. Freeze dry. So we have like fresh veggies if we want. We can freeze dry. If you have a freeze dryer, you can pretty much like anything. You can have strawberries in the middle of winter because you freeze dried them. And, and a lot of our ancestors were doing this, right? They were drying. They were dehydrating in the sun. They were keeping those foods, making pemmican and taking those berries that they collected in the summer, which had really high glucose that they needed for energy. They would dry them out and they would pound them into their pemmican. They would keep them through the winter, or they would just gorge on them in the season, gorge on them and get all that glucose, get all that fat. Get all that good fat on your body because come winter, you're going to burn that fat. It's kind of like a loan, right? It's like when you got the berries, eat the berries because you need to build fat because glucose does lay down fat. if you're not super active. And so you lay that down. But now we just have like so much consumption everywhere that you just have so many choices, and people are, I think it comes down to people are just disconnected. So the disconnection from food, and that has always been mine and Ryan's thing, is like we are so disconnected from our food.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why we support hunting, is that if we were to lose hunting or animal husbandry or whatever, you that's an either further disconnect from your food. You have to rely on somebody else to kill that food for you.
Right.
And most people, that's how they eat their meat. They have no connection to that meat and to that food. And it's the same thing with vegetables they're buying in the store in the plastic and, everything else. So we live in a world of dichotomies, right? Like I sit here and preach to people to eat healthier and to grow your own food and to buy a freeze dryer. But then again, that comes from a world of privilege, I know. But that also comes from just years of hard work and understanding that that's how I feel the best. So I'm going to put that effort into it. And it's kind of too where you spend your money. So people spend money, on Gucci handbags and, yachts. And some people spend their money on freeze dryers and seeds and
I feel
on
like
hunting tags. That would be
yeah. I feel like
or
a lot of
education.
A lot of this stuff came from it started potentially from a good place, right? Like to giving access to food, like back in the day when a lot of these problems kind of were born. The goal was, how do we feed all these people and how do we make this more efficient? And then it became a money making thing for a lot of these ingredients and things. And preservatives, it seems like to me, were created, to preserve food longer for more people. And then what happens is these economies of scale occur and these companies figure out they can make more and more money. And then pretty soon we all buy into these things. And it is hard to do what you do. And not everybody has access. Most people live in urban environments, right? Mm-hmm. That's why it's cool. Some of these things that are popping up, like community gardens and stuff like that. I think that's kind of cool. And not everybody can hunt.
People have, a lot of people haven't, if nothing else, they have a deck off their apartment maybe, or they have a little patch of grass, and now we just feed grass and we give it chemicals and we keep our grass pretty. But if there was incentive to turn that grass into a garden bed, into raised beds and into veggies and,
it's so funny that you mentioned that, Hillary, because I am so tired. I think grass and us Americans are it's so weird to me how we cherish this green grass and we take care of it, we mow it, we throw all these chemicals on it. And I'm like, why? So our backyard recently, we have big maple trees in our backyard. And every year we get, I don't even know how many pounds of leaves. It's a lot. If I let all the leaves fall without raking them, they'd probably be 2 feet deep. It's a lot. And what happened this year is I couldn't get, I put it off. I couldn't get it done. Anyways, it killed half of our yard. And once we finally got all these leaves off, and I told my wife, I'm like, here's the deal. I'm so sick of acting like I care about that grass. Our kids don't really use it that much. They use the front yard, but not as much the backyard. And so our yard on the one side, we have a garden, and then we have the rest is this nice green grass. We spent a bunch of money, getting laying all this sod, doing all these things. Anyway, so this morning, actually, we were talking about it, or last night, and we're like, why don't we just turn the rest of the thing into a garden? Because we don't care about the grass. It just costs money. It's annoying. And what are we doing it? So other people come over and they're like, wow, you have a nice grass. You take good care of your grass. I don't really care what other people think. What if we actually made the land useful? Maybe part of it turns into a chicken coop. The other parts, we just make the rest of it a garden.
Yeah, if you live in a place where you can do that, unfortunately, a lot of people live in these HOAs and there's all these rules and you have to keep your grass and you can't put it. That's what's ridiculous. It's you pay money for a house, the HOA tells you what you can do with it, and you can't put a garden there. You have to put grass there. And it's Okay, well that makes absolutely no sense. It's just all aesthetics, and what it looks like. And meantime, you've got millions and millions of usable land that could be used for helping to feed people and helping to teach people how to take care of themselves. But yet, we tell them they have to grow grass and then go buy their food at a freaking convenience store. I mean, it's just, we are a strange species, that's for sure.
Where's it going? Where's it going? Like, I feel like we're headed the wrong direction.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do fear a bit for the future generations here as far as, the dependence on technology now is changing, I think, the level at how hard people want to work. With AI, and I mean, AI is amazing. I've gotten some great things from AI. I mean, I'm in medicine, and we have charts, and we now have these programs with AI that can basically listen to an entire medical conversation and turn it into a chart note. It saves me literally probably 20 hours a week. It's crazy. Wow. But when you think of what that's doing, right? Like the ease at which it is going to be to live in the future, and then the way technology sucks us in, learning these life skills is much harder. It's going to it's like, it almost is like has to be forced to teach children how to like go outside and play and grow a garden and grow a carrot and, go play in the river and go catch a fish. And so if you're on your technology all the time, which a lot of us are now because we own businesses and it requires technology, we are getting sucked in as well. And I do fear for, our children are seeing us do that, and they are maybe not getting those life skills that we were lucky enough to get and to see, because our parents maybe were young and distracted with being young, but they didn't have technology. I mean, when I was a kid, my dad only let us watch PBS, and we watched the nightly news, and we watched one TV series a week, like MASH or something. And the rest of the time we were had to be outside. The rest of the time we had to be doing something. We were not just that, there wasn't that distraction. So the world is changing, and we have to figure out how is that, how do we pass these skills down? Because if AI can create everything, and you can just go to a grocery store now and there's not even people working in there, and it can just read what you bought and you just walk out with it, and it charges your credit card. It's like we don't realize how fast it's changing, and it really is. And a lot of these life skills are going to be lost because the convenience of living is going to become so easy that it's going to be hard. It's like, why work so hard? Why work so hard to live? Why would you live like that? And that's more my fear. And then, of course, seeing the health implications that it has on people's minds and bodies. That's just obvious. And that's been happening since post-war era, really.
Maybe the optimistic view of it is maybe AI will allow more time to focus on those things. Maybe
exactly.
Maybe that's
AI
a better. I don't know.
do all your work and all your writing and all your charting and all your, pay all your bills and do all the things that you do have to take time to do. But it will also, I think that's the positive side. And then if you flip it over, it will addict you to the feeling of having things immediately. It will continue the immediate gratification of having things now, literally now. And I mean, like ChatGPT, holy crap, like you just put in a sentence and right now you have an entire book. And that's just something that we never had as kids. And I even find myself I'm 50 and I find myself having a short attention span and trying to read a book. It's like, well, I don't really need to read this. I could just literally go get I could listen to it. I could do 50 other things while I'm listening to it. I don't know. I don't know where it's going. Obviously, every generation is going to get dumber in some things and smarter in other things. And, maybe we will be able, and you see how healthcare is going too. I mean, we may have such advancements in healthcare that people are going to live a really long time and be able to have better health, maybe, that would be the goal. But I think that that's going to be, for a very long time, that's going to be only for the privileged and the people that can afford it. Everybody else at the bottom, they're all still going to be eating from the Walmart, playing their video games, being told this is, life is easy. You don't have to suffer. Just stay here. Just make this easy. When in truth, they eventually are suffering because they don't have the income. They don't have the potential they're not making the effort to go out and to change their lives. And this is where the powerful control everybody. And we're seeing that in the world,
Speaking of that, I watched a clip from a podcast that Lex Friedman did with Jeff Bezos the other day. Speaking of being a little creeped out.
And all those podcasts with those guys at the top are always a little interesting.
Yeah, I'm always like, dude, is that guy an alien? He doesn't seem normal to me. Like if we are
Lex Friedman or Jeff Bezos?
Lex
both
Friedman,
of them.
Yeah, Lex is at least. I feel like I could hang out with that guy and feel normal. Like I could have a beer with him. Yeah, Jeff Bezos. I don't feel like I could hang out with him. He just seems. I don't know. Like if we are living in a simulation, like some people think we are, those would be the type of people that would be created to like they like know we're in a simulation, so they already know all that. It's like having the almanac from the future and back to the future. Anyways,
well, power to the nerds. The nerds are taking over the world. The people that were bullied in high school and beat up and said they were never going to amount to anything. They're the richest, literally richest men in the world. And they are controlling, whether good or bad, all of our mental, emotional, physical, buying, functioning. Like it's really, really crazy what's happened.
He was talking about with Lex about. Oh, Lex asked him, "Do you think we're going to have to move civilization into space? If so, when? And if so, what does that look like?" And he went into this. He's very well articulated, by the way. Obviously, he's smart. He's created like the most valuable company ever. But he started talking about, he's like, we're going to have to do that. And we're going to have to someday, like our kids, grandkids, or their grandkids or whatever, Earth will be looked at more like Yellowstone National Park as somewhere that you go visit to see what life used to be like. But you live in these huge space stations that they spin at a certain rate that gives it like Earth's gravity, and on the inside it's like a simulated Earth environment with neighborhoods and cities. And at some point in the in not the very long future in terms of world time, a lot of civilization is going to treat Earth more like a tourist destination than a place to live, which is, I know it's like super intense to think about and kind of sad for our generation. Rogan said the other day that we may be the last actual biological human generation, or I would argue that maybe our parents were that, because we have our phones, which is basically makes us like a cyborg. But it's crazy to think about all this stuff, but that's kind of where the world's going. So I'm like, God, how do you instill like these tenets that we've been talking about to our kids, just so my wife's like, someday your great grandkids are going to be like, my dad was a hunter down there on that Earth. That's crazy. Like he was like killing those animals that you've seen in books and in museums. Like that sounds crazy.
I think an interesting thing to think about, and I think about this sometime, is that really it's in the eye of the beholder. So what is freedom to you? What is choice to you? What is freedom to you? Well, for some people, it's having access to a city like New York City and being able to, be exposed to cultures and blah, blah, blah. And to us, like to my husband, freedom to him is to be able to walk out into the wild and to experience the animals and to be really raw in nature. Mm-hmm. And I think that if we move to a place like that, then it also is kind of in the eye, but the beholder is like, is this freedom or is this not? If you currently live in this world and you don't feel like you're free, that may seem really freeing to you. If you live in this world now and you have what you consider true freedom and you're really afraid of losing it, that world seems like a total cyborg nightmare. of how you would never want to live. And I think what's going to happen is that, however, they round everybody up and throw them into these flying around cities in the universe, is like, who's going to agree and who's not going to agree. And maybe the people that don't agree, they stay here and we become relics. Like, people come to see us like the grizzly bear in Yellowstone. And the people that are flying around in the cities, they chose to be there, and that's how they want to live their life. Hopefully you would have the choice. But remember, in anything in history where you had massive amounts of, where you had people that had difference of opinions with the top percent or the rulers or whoever, like the Jeff Bezoses of the world, doesn't usually turn out very good. Meaning the people that don't agree or don't fall in line, they end up, being persecuted or being killed. And so I don't know how we come to a utopian place where you can just choose where you want to go, and whatever your definition of freedom is your definition of freedom. But it seems to me like for that to actually happen, you have to change the entire conscious, ideals of the entire planet to agree. And that just doesn't seem to be human nature. So what is it going to take to actually get us in those things, right? To me, it seems like there's probably going to be predecessing war or famine or whatever, and again, that could be looking at it negatively. Maybe not. Maybe we can utopian come together and we can realize, you just be who you are, I'll be who I am. I'm going to go up in the sky. That's where I'm going to live. And Mom, I'll come visit you down on Earth, once in a while. So
I can tell you right now, I ain't going. I'm dying here.
I don't really.
I'm good.
I don't really have that desire either. Yeah. I feel like there's some people too, they just have always, any type of exploration. I mean, think about when the Vikings crossed the Atlantic in freaking boats that today, I mean, if you asked somebody to cross the Atlantic in a boat like that, people would be, no.
There's not enough tough people to do that.
I think they'd kill themselves before they were forced to do that, right? But Vikings did that,
And do it with no medicine.
Yeah,
no good
think
food.
about the people that came from sub-Saharan Africa and spread around the continent. People moved and people shifted, and but we are growing generations of very unhealthy, not I don't know, we just
resilient.
I feel like, yeah, but we also remember we have so many other problems in the world. We have religious strife, we have strife over land, and we have again, there's so many different people.
Well, that's what I worry about the most, though,
on this planet. How are we all going to come together? It's like, are the Jews and the Muslims and the Christians all just going to get in the city and live together, or are you going to go live in your Christian city? How are these worlds going to be? Are we all going to agree that we're just humans and we need to get along? That hasn't happened yet, obviously.
What I worry about the most is with technology has advanced so quickly over the last 50 years. With the invention of AI, it's going to be exponentially faster over the next 100 years, 1,000 years, 50,000 years. I worry the most about the lag between innovation and our human biology. We can't evolve our brains and our bodies fast enough to catch up with that innovation. So we run into these problems where our brains already don't know how to handle Instagram and Twitter and Skype and all these things. What's it going to be 1,000 years from now when evolutionarily we haven't changed very much? We still have all of our same natural processes and everything, but we're 1,000 years from now and AI has totally changed the entire world by means that we can't even imagine now. But and our brains are shit, I don't know how to handle this. So if we're in a mental health crisis right now, what the hell are we going to be in 1,000 years if we even exist anymore?
Well, I think the movement which you're talking about, or Jeff Bezos was talking about, is we will then have technology that people are going to be living quite a bit longer, I'm sure, too. We're going to have technology that is going to basically preserve us or regenerate us at the point where we can continue to live these really long lives. But that also, I think, as we know, life and death are the continuum of people born, people die. And if you constantly have people being born and nobody's ever dying, I mean, this may be the situation in which we are required to leave Earth. Because if people are living to be 150 years old, 200 years old, even 120 years old, if you think of all the baby boomers right now, the tail end of the baby boomers, everybody just started living to be 120 years old and demanding resources. Yikes. Like, that's
he
not
talked
going to
about
work.
that. He talked about that in the podcast where he believes that we can reach 1 trillion humans, but the only way that we can do that is by utilizing resources from the moon and asteroids and being a multiplanetary species. I struggle with, obviously I want to live as long as possible, but I morally struggle with the idea of living too long. Like, I just don't know. Life's not easy, right? And I mean, it's beautiful and wonderful, and there's lots of great things, but I also feel like death can be beautiful. Like, if you've lived a fulfilling and great life, like you reach 110 years old, even now, or like even 90 years old, 92, 93, 94. Obviously, you want to live longer so you can spend more time with your loved ones and do whatever. But isn't there a point where it's like, okay, I'm done. I had a great life. This is enough.
Yeah, I think there is. I think that there's some people that, there are some people that are obsessed with staying young, and they are, they created entire platforms off of it. But these are very wealthy people, first of all, and they have the resources to do pretty much anything and everything under the sun to reverse their biological age. So you could live chronologically, you're 100, but biologically, am I right?
Yeah, you're right.
You're 100. Biologically, you're like 40. And you can just stay at 40 and you're 100. Well, there's no way, unless the technology in healthcare, and we have the freaking worst healthcare system on the planet in the United States, and we're supposedly the richest country in the world. So tell me how we're going to suddenly create trillions of super healthy people that are living to be 150 years old without massive detriment to our resources, like Jeff Bezos. There's no even possibility of that. But if you think about it, that means that everybody would be having access to these treatments, these regenerative therapies, to gene modification at birth. Humans are just we have a lot of faults in ways that, like, this could come down to something as like, okay, you can pick the gender of your child. You can pick what your child looks like.
That's not very far away, by the way.
No, this is happening with CRISPR and stuff. You can pick anything, but then what are you going to start making rules on that? Well, obviously we need to have 50% women and 50% boys.
And we need to have, who's
making all these rules? And this is what I'm saying.
Can everybody have, like, because you'll be able to choose, like, do you want your kid to be super successful at sports? Well, obviously.
Well, yeah, like, who's going to say, I want a mediocre kid who's got a lot of health problems and doesn't want to do anything with their life. Nobody is going to pick that kid.
I want Tiger Woods. Can you give me that? Like, that's what I want. I want someone who's going to be the best athlete in the world.
I was thinking the other thing too is that I think we just have to, the expectation that we usually have of ourselves. I think sometimes we have these expectations for other people, thinking that they want that change as well. Not everyone wants to get better. Not everyone wants to go to the moon. Not everyone wants to, have $1 billion in the bank and be the richest guy on the block. Not, there's so many things that people want in their life that are different. And I see this in healthcare too, is like the people that are sitting in my office, they made a choice. Like, I didn't drag them off the street. They came in, they paid the money. They're saying something's off and I want to get support for this and figure out what this is. And so they're making that effort to change. But a long time ago, I kind of got over this idea that everybody wants help, everybody needs help. Like, like we are humans in the ability that we can make choice. And these guys that are creating all these amazing technologies and, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and like whatever, that have all the money and the resources and the ability to think this big, like to think so big, that to think that we'd be living in cities flying around the planet. They have the luxury of that, but those are probably the brains they came with before they were even billionaires. And it just so happened that they used the benefits of knowing how to think outside the box to make themselves $1 billion. And notice that lots of people follow those people and buy their products and are on their social media platforms and buy their cars and do all this because you look up to people who actually like do something really tremendous with their life. Most people do in a lot of ways. Like, I think it's so cool that somebody can come from nothing and make $1 billion. But at the same time, we have to realize like not everybody is like wired for that. Not everybody cares about that. Not everybody cares about their health. The problem that I see with that is that it just becomes a burden on those of us who do, because in our system, we all are actually connected more than we think we are. And so in the end, we all end up paying the burden of somebody not taking care of themselves. And, this is where I say to people, like, if you really love your children, you'll take care of yourself. Because the biggest complication that your children are going to have someday is they're going to be taking care of you. And eventually, we're all probably going to be taking care of our children, even when we're old, right? Like, hopefully, if your children love you and they want to be around you, but like they're going to end up taking care of you. I think I'm in that middle age. You're there. I think about my mom getting older and, okay, what are we going to do when she can't stay in her house anymore? So someday I hope my girls are going to want to do that for me as well. But if you have been really poor health, you have not been taking care of yourself, that could be a bigger project for the people that you love. And so I think that, but I do think about that. Why try to force everybody to be healthy? Why try to force everybody to grow a garden? Why try to force, you can't. Like,
no, you can't.
You have to realize that it's kind of the way the world is. That's why I kind of laugh at these ideas of like, we're going to be up in a city around because how are you going to get everybody to do that with all the different types of people?
Well, he did say it was probably going to be a choice. He did say it was probably going to be a choice. And that makes me think about something that I've been thinking about a lot, which is this. It was tied to the Israeli Gaza conflict, and I was listening to a podcast, Ben Shapiro podcast, and he constantly is harping on this. We have this idea, especially as Americans, that everybody thinks like we do. Everybody wants the same things that we do, and they believe the same things we do intrinsically. And he's like, it's just not the case. When you start talking about different ideologies from around the world, like not everybody wants what we do. When you talk about Russia, North Korea, China, Hamas, like in Hamas's example, they want the destruction of Israel. And if by their choice, it would be killing all the Jews, not a few of them, all of them. And so his whole point is like, look, quit tricking yourself into thinking that everybody just wants to live like I do as this American. It's not true. It's not true. So it's important when you're looking at all these conflicts all over the world, or like where we go in the future, to know that like, yeah, you can, like we all do it. We talk about things we believe in, and that's great, but it doesn't mean everybody has to listen. There are ramifications sometimes for people that don't listen. For example, when we have these tremendously complicated conflicts and we can't get all on the same page, it can cause really big problems. But when it comes to health, like I find myself doing the same thing, Hillary. Like sometimes I have friends or family that I'm like, listen, like if you could just do these few things, like they're like, I'm so depressed and this or that or whatever the other problem is. And I'm like, oh my God, it wouldn't be that complicated to at least get yourself back on the right track. They don't want to listen because they don't actually want the solution. They want to bitch about the problem. And that's just one example, right? So I'm like, why am I wasting my time? They don't want a solution. Like I'm just preaching to someone. But if someone asks me about something that I'm good at or I'm knowledgeable about, they actually want they're asking. So they have invited me to give my opinion or whatever knowledge I have. But I do feel like especially with the invention of social media, sometimes we feel like we have to preach to everybody about these things. Maybe it's the wrong way to look at it. It's like, I'm going to say what I think, take it or leave it. It doesn't bother me.
Well, what's actually happening in today's world with social media world is people are actually saying what they think, and if you don't agree with them, then they're putting you in a category. That's actually what's happening today. Nobody's saying like, hey, you know what? You're a free human being. You decide what you want to think and what you want to believe. And as long as you're not hurting anybody, hey, that's your thing. That's not what people are saying now. What's happening more and more and more and more is you better believe like I believe. And if you don't, then you will basically
you'll be put into a prison and executed.
I mean, this is like, and this
that's the extreme example, right?
Since COVID, it's gotten like horrible to the point of like, now every single tragedy that happens in the world, if you don't comment on it, you are like some horrible person who wants war. And let me just state that I think that human suffering is something that we all can agree is universal. We all suffer. Every person on this planet has suffered at some point in their life. Now, the degree of suffering, of course, there's a very large degree of suffering. And there's, when I've said the word privilege several times, but to me, what privilege means is that I was born where I was born at the time I was born, and I have been able to do things with my life that women born at the exact same time in a different location, in a different body, in a different religion, in a different set of circumstances would not have the ability to do. Okay? I call that privilege. So we've also stigmatized so many words that you can't even use them anymore. So to me, privilege means I have the privilege of being able to sit here with you, have this conversation, talk about the problems of the world, yet I am not living in a war-torn,
you're not getting missiles thrust at your house.
Environment. Yeah. No. Yeah. And I, as a woman, my freedoms are ridiculous compared to even my grandmother's day. I love to read books. I love to read novels. I love to read novels, kind of historical novels, especially World War II era, Cold War, all these things. There were women in the Cold War era who couldn't even get jobs, who couldn't even go to school. This was in America. Okay. You couldn't even have a bank account by yourself as a woman until the 1970s. So like, I could have been my grandmother. And my privilege today as a woman compared to my grandmother's privilege is so much higher than what she can have. And my grandmother's privilege compared to a woman that was living in like, someplace sub-Saharan Africa starving, and her children were starving and she couldn't get a job and she had no rights at all. And like, you remember, there's levels here. And so for me, but what happens now is that it becomes as if we are all, because of the common human condition of suffering, is that now we are supposedly supposed to feel the suffering of the entire world all at the same time. And let me tell you, our biochemistry is not able to process that. We were meant to live in small communities, small towns, know the business of everybody in your own town, gossip. And this is all over the world. You can go to a village in Italy. You can go to a village in Turkey. You can go to a village here in Eastern Montana. Everybody has their little towns and their little gossip and their little this and their little that. But once you get over a certain amount of people and you get over a certain amount of issues and you are now exposed to the greater, like, our brains cannot neurologically comprehend the amount of suffering that might be going on in all those places. And what does that cause? That causes paralysis, that causes fear, that causes depression, that causes anxiety, that causes judgment, that causes, it's basically like all the things that we are trying to preach that we aren't, that we're so caring and we're so loving, but yet we expect everybody out there to be like processing all the traumas of everybody in the world. And, some people just can't do that very well. And that's what social media has done. That's what it's done in a lot of ways, is it's made us feel guilty. If you have any privilege and you live where you do, you should feel guilty for that. And therefore you should process the traumas of everybody in the world that's having a trauma right now. And I just get really sick and tired of being told how I'm supposed to feel about other people's traumas. That's my biggest problem with it, because I am a bleeding heart out the eardrum. I mean, look what I do for a living. I mean, I listen to people's traumas all day long, and you can put them on whatever, you can rate them however you think what's important. But let me tell you, human condition is suffering, and people suffer in so many different ways. And my job is to help them not to have to suffer as much. So when I see all this stuff constantly, it's like my brain cannot possibly process the amount of human suffering that is being endured at this very second. And it will throw me into a deep spiral of helplessness and depression, because there's really nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do about it sitting here right now in the suffering. Now, we have done things in the past where we've helped refugees, we've saved families, we gathered money, we've given goods, we've trying to do the best we can. And I've met some of those people that I've helped, and I can't even tell you like the reward it is. Like I just cry thinking about that I've helped some family like not be killed by the Taliban. Like, I don't care who they are, what their religion is, or, whatever. So to me, I see suffering in people to a point where like now there's no forgiveness. And that's what I worry about for our children's generation, is how are we going to move out of this when every single person is processing everybody's trauma throughout the world, and you just can't handle it. It's like, it's creating a vicious circle. And if you can make it good, and you can donate money, and you can actually actively get out there, but where you need to be most active is like in your community.
Yeah.
You need to be most active in your tribe. That's where you can handle that. Yeah. But when you start getting too far out into all of the world, it's going to cause you a lot more problems, because
it seems
we
like
are caring human beings.
Yeah. And, all
Sorry,
of that
I just got a little emotional there.
You're good. All of that starts with yourself. And to your point, there's what's called the Dunbar principle, or the Dunbar rule, right, where you can only handle so many relationships. I think that the 150 people is the maximum amount of relationships, quote unquote, that you can handle as a human being, just biologically speaking. But it's really 3 to 5 actual close friends. And if you think about like, I saw a funny video the other day, and it's kind of, it's funny, but it's not funny, right? Because it's talking about something. It was talking about, again, the Israel thing, and he's like, it's a comedian, and he's like, it's amazing. I figured out how to solve the Israeli conflict, but I can't even make my own bed or clean my room, and I still live with my mom, right?
Right.
And it's like, the point of it is like, if we all just would take a second and try to fix our own lives, it would actually do what we're all trying to do by reading the news and getting on social media and like, hammering people on social media about all these things. It's like, dude, if you just like put that energy into fixing yourself and then fixing the people that are closest, or like supporting the people that are closest to you, and then your community, if everybody did that, the world would be a better place. But I feel like we all leave our own lives in shambles, our own community. We don't do shit for our own communities. And then we try to solve these huge world issues on social media by being a social media justice or a social justice warrior on social media. It's so fucked up. And yeah, I mean, I fall into it too sometimes, right? Like, I don't know jack shit about the middle. I would have to spend my entire life reading up about the Middle East to truly understand the depth of the complexities of our problems there. And based on the people that I trust and listen to, it's probably not a solvable thing. Like, it's a math equation that may not be able to be solved, which is super scary. But when I go, okay, what can I do to make myself a better person, my wife, my kids, my community? And like, I lack there, just like most of us. We all fall short on that, and it's like maybe if we went back to that and we weren't so connected with the rest of the world, like back in the day when you could only be connected to your people and your tribe of 50 to 150. Maybe if there was a way to go back to that, which maybe there's not, the world would be a better place in all.
Well, we just have such an epidemic of mental disease right now. We have so much anxiety and depression. I'll just use those two. And I think a lot of that comes from feeling useless, meaning that when you see these things happening somewhere like the Middle East, and you see these stories and you hear these atrocious acts, you realize there's nothing you can do. And it makes you feel helpless. And so what I do tell people, and I've done this for myself, and you can think what you want of me, because I'm 50. I don't really care what you think of me anymore. But I see a lot of middle-aged women who are grappling with their own physical changes and emotional changes, trying to figure out where they fit into the world. Their children are growing up and leaving. These are traumas that in families, we see these. They may be going through severe relationship issues. They're going through serious health issues. They have aging parents. The gamut is non-ending on what can go on. But women in general, we tend to be more caring in a way in which the way that our brain is built is that we multitask. We can also see more peripheral vision. So we see more of what's going on and we really feel it in our bodies. That's the way our hormones are created. And so that we take care of our children and we bond with our children and we take care of the community. So in general, women are just more sensitive to these insults that go on. And when you get on your social media and you start scrolling and you see videos of people being tortured, killed, raped, abused, that goes straight into your emotional mental state. And you may not think it at that time, but what I've seen in most women is it ends up creating this endless spiral of severe depression and anxiety because you can't actually do anything for that person that you're seeing harmed in the video. And that's very disturbing to women, especially to women that are mothers, grandmothers, whatever. Like, you would go lift a car off your child if you could. Now, men would do the same thing. Men are protectors in a way, but their biology is wired a little bit differently. And so when they see these types of images, they have more of the feeling of, I need to go fight and I need to go protect. Right? Like, I need to go do something. I need to solve this problem. That's why men and women sometimes don't get along, because women want to be heard and men want to solve the problem. And men have their biochemistry is different. And so sometimes men can actually absorb and see more of these things and not be as emotionally affected by women just based on their hormonal systems. And so what I've done is I've basically unfollowed anybody who's posting sometimes I open my social media and the first video that pops up, because it's getting watched the most, right, are these horrible videos. It's like you can't unsee it. So I just unfollow people that are posting these things. They're trying to trigger you. They're trying to get you to feel bad, to do something, to give money to whatever. Like, I will give money, but I'm not going to give money to people that are posting nothing but people being tortured, just trying to prove that you need to do something, or you need to stand up. And it's just like, well, what is that doing for me? And I tell people with their health right now, you have to be careful about your social media. And you have to be careful about what you're willing to watch. And some people are okay watching that stuff, and it doesn't, but I don't think anybody's okay with it. That's my personal opinion, but hey, you can think what you want. But I know women for sure, and children for sure, should not be seeing these visuals that seem to just be everywhere now. And
my
this
biggest
is what I'm
regret
saying
so far as a parent is we got our daughter a phone 2 years ago, and screens in our house are a fucking cancer. It is a constant battle with and specifically with our daughter. We will not do this again with our sons. It's YouTube, and she got so many wonderful things out of YouTube. This is the problem. She learned how to play the guitar off YouTube and me. But a lot of YouTube's she can actually learn a lot from YouTube. There's been tons of skills she's learned. She's Rubik's cubes and all these things. So there's been benefit, but the problem is she is already severely addicted to her phone. And now we're getting into the phase where she's constantly, like your daughter, when your phone call came in, I giggled because my daughter is just all day either FaceTiming or texting her best friend. That's what she does. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is the YouTube thing. So with my son, we just got him for his birthday. We're giving him what's called a Gab phone, which doesn't have there's no apps. It's literally a phone. You can text and phone call on it. In fact, I don't even know if you can, you should be able to text. You can text and call. So, because he's going to get in the middle school and he's got to be able to get a hold of me if I don't show up to pick him up or something like that. You know what I mean? So like, it's just a safety thing and just getting him used to communicating. But I will absolutely not allow social media, YouTube, any of that shit on their phones until at least 16, 17 in this house, because what happens is we have to set these strict time limits now on screens every day, and every day it's a battle. They always try to get more. And I see it and I'm like, dude, you're like a heroin addict. Like, you're literally crying about this right now. You can't go throw your football, go shoot your bow, go do something with your life instead. And then they get irritable. They won't eat. They're grumpy. It's just, I'm like,
they're dopamine deficient. Yeah, they're dopamine deficient. So I do run blood tests on a lot of people, and part of a hormonal panel that I run on, anybody I run hormones on has dopamine metabolites and noradrenaline and adrenaline metabolites, and across the board, everybody's dopamine deficient. Why would everybody? Why would a 50-year-old woman, a 25-year-old woman, a 25-year-old guy, why would you be dopamine deficient? The only reason you'd be dopamine deficient is because we're all on our electronics 24/7, and it depletes dopamine reserve. And so this is why people feel tired. Gotcha. Yeah, they feel tired, they feel worn out, they feel anxious, and they can't focus, and they can't stay on task, and they can't go 2 seconds without checking their phone because they're getting a dopamine hit. And this is also why I say, like, these social media channels that are constantly putting out visuals and things that get your attention, and the reels, just the whole way Instagram's changed since we've gotten on Instagram with the reels and the algorithms. They're meant to suck you in, and your dopamine, you keep scroll. You can't stop yourself. And we're all
like a bag of Doritos.
Yeah, it's like we're all addicted and we're all guilty. I mean, I'm guilty. And every time my daughter's like, Mom, put your phone down, I just feel this like weird sinking in my chest. Like,
yeah,
oh my God, I'm such a horrible parent. What am I doing? But you have to actually, like, that's why I said, like, sometimes you do have to take the devices away and they have to go through a detox. And we've had this conversation recently too, because we have a teenager and we have an 8-year-old, but I've decided that, I just decided last week, I was like, we're all the devices are going in a basket after dinner, 7:00. You're going to have dinner, and then you're going to get like a half an hour after, if you want to call your friend or you want to do whatever, text, it's going in the basket. And it's not getting picked up again until the next morning when you head off to school. Now, my 8-year-old doesn't have a phone. She has a little watch. She can text me on and stuff. My teenager has a phone. And I know at school, they can't have them out. Like, there's lots of rules at school with the phone. So I know at school they're being tightly controlled with the phone. But then when they get home, I mean, it's just like she would just be on her phone literally all day long. And Ryan's actually wanted to get rid of it. And I'm trying to find a middle ground. But it's like you have to. And when I told her, she just gave me this look like, what? And I'm like, yeah, taking the phones away at night. You're going to have to read a book. And she does like to read. I'm really lucky. She loves books. So she does read. She paints and draws. I said, you're going to have to do something else. And she was like, oh, okay. All right. And you know what's weird? I feel bad about that. Like,
I know.
That I'm taking her device away from her. And it's like, I do think that we have to be more responsible. The problem is we're all addicted to it. We're all, we are addicts telling our children not to be addicts.
No, I know. Every time I criticize them, I look at myself and I'm like on Instagram.
I know, it's so hard. You're like, how do you, this is like the people that created this. I mean, talk about the geniuses, the nerds again, went out, like the geniuses that have created literally, there's nothing more addictive in this world right now than this. No. This has become our God. This is our church. Back in the day, people went to church. People went to, they had a religion, they had a community, they had somewhere where they went and they prayed and they worshiped. This is now where we go.
That's
and
so crazy.
The whole world. This is how they were able to do COVID. This is how they were able to do all this, because we were all so addicted at that point that we were all connected. We're all connected now. So again, back to that biochemistry of not being able to handle the fact that you are actually connected to millions of people at the same time. That just blows your mind. But when you see how the web works, you realize it's not hard to do anymore, because we're all connected. And we're
when
all
you talk
addicts.
about dopamine, I totally agree. Dopamine deficiency. So your brain can only produce so much dopamine. Is that what you're saying? And then you use it all up? Is that what you're saying?
Well, you use it. So there is genetic differences in some people. Some people utilize dopamine faster than others, so they process it faster than others. Some people make more than others, but there's a gene called the COMT gene, which basically, if you have a fast moving COMT, you process dopamine really fast. So you tend to need more hits because you need dopamine. The breakdown products of dopamine are adrenaline and noradrenaline, so they give you the hit. Okay. If you process that really fast, you run through that adrenaline quite fast. And so you need more. These are also the people that tend to be risk takers. They tend to be addicts more because they need the hit. They tend to be bullies. Very interesting. Bullies tend to have lower dopamine. So they bully because it gives them a hit of dopamine and it makes them feel better. Okay. So, people that have slow COMTs, they don't process that adrenaline and noradrenaline as fast, so they tend to be more anxious, and they're not the risk takers. They're quite safe, and everything's safe, and doesn't necessarily mean that they focus better, but they tend not to be doing high-risk things to increase dopamine because they already are processing it slower, so they have too much of the end product of adrenaline, so they will maybe get more anxious if they have too much. But remember, things like Adderall. Adderall is an amphetamine that basically increases dopamine production, and so the side effect, obviously, of Adderall is kind of the amphetamine-like effects, right? Like jittery, anxiety, loss of appetite, blah blah blah. But it helps you focus because you've got a lot more dopamine going on there. And usually why it's the drug of choice for a lot of people when they're trying to create focus, quite intense focus. And people that have severe ADHD, Ritalin and Adderall, they work quite well because they help to keep that dopamine functioning and in place. But it is obviously a drug of abuse as well, because we all need more focus and attention because we're all addicted to dopamine depleting activities, which would be devices and computers and EMFs. They do the same thing as well. So your genetics do play into it, but I would say the level at which we are exposed now, it's kind of affecting everybody. Yeah.
Do you think that's why I experience crashes? Like if I have a really exciting hunting trip and I get back, or any kind of trip really, where it's a lot of fun, super highs, super lows, my brain's been through a roller coaster. I get home, I usually have 3 or 4 or 5 days where I feel really low. And I always feel like that's kind of like a dopamine crash. It's like real life and reality hits you. It's ugh. And I'm ugh, I don't feel like I can, I'm kind of gray. Do you think that has something to do with it?
It'd be interesting to get your COMT gene tested. You can do that in any genetic testing. It will tell you if you have it. Also, sometimes you could have a perfectly balanced COMT, but you have lots of methylation defects, and that will push the COMT to be more dysfunctional. So there are other genes that play into that. I think there is something about excitement, that does keep us at a level of performance, and then when we're not in, that is not a demand on us anymore, or we've gotten through the exciting thing, the dopamine does wear off. I mean, it's the same as if you fall in love and you just are, when you're younger and you have that feeling and everything is a flutter all the time, And then eventually relationships turn into real relationships where you can't keep that like edge all the time, and it's not as exciting anymore. And I think when people are dopamine addicts and they like the hit, that's when they start to create drama because they need the hit again. So you know these relationships where it's like things start smoothing out and then somebody starts something and then there's some trauma and then everybody gets jacked up again and then you get together and it's exciting again. And it's like these neurotransmitters and obviously hormones that work with the neurotransmitters. It's very interesting, especially in human behavior, what we will do to keep that feeling of excitement. But, life isn't exciting all the time. And if you overdo it, then you will kind of go back, you will go down a little bit where you have to replenish yourself. That's the whole point of replenishing yourself and not overdoing it. But, we have so many things we can get addicted to drive that feeling, whether it's, the phone, the hunt, exercise, relationships, food, sex,
And they talk about
gambling.
Right. I feel like this is where people cheat and they do things like that too, because it's like they're looking for that excitement again, and probably a relationship that has become kind of just meh. Speaking of dopamine, I wanted to ask you about this. Cold plunges. So I've recently been being fed things on my social media. Yay, dopamine hit. About there's now people coming out against it as of course, right? And this one doctor was like super adamant that there's absolutely no benefit to it. It's all a fad. It doesn't work. And he was talking about how, the American Heart Association, which I don't know how much I trust any American association, but I don't know anything about it. But let's just say that it was a trustworthy organization, says there's no net benefit to cold plunging. In fact, the dangers outweigh the benefits. But yet I still am getting fed all these people like Huberman and these people that I do trust that are like that are referencing this data from all over the world that says it is beneficial. So what is Hillary Lamper's opinion?
You're like asking me questions. I have no research in front of me. I can't
That's okay, but what's your opinion on it?
So I will say my own experience. I'll just go off my experience.
Okay.
When I am not highly stressed out and I'm feeling well in my life, my body's feeling well, cold plunging is great. Like I can handle it. Cold showers, cold plunging. I went through a period too with post-COVID where I was not well, and actually cold plunging really helped me some. Mm-hmm. But it was summer. It was the middle of summer. It was hot outside. I could get in my cold thing and sit in there for a little bit, and it helped. I was not doing it in the middle of winter when here it's, 10 below zero, and I was not chopping the ice off. I was doing it, I would say, a moderate cold plunge, right? Mm-hmm. Because for me, the extremes, I don't do well in extremes. I don't. So when I'm going to do a cold plunge or something, I'll go lay in the snow after my sauna. But I'm pretty, like the sauna, I love heat. So I will do the extreme of heat, but I need that balance. But if I'm not doing well, like I'm feeling really run down, I'm feeling really exhausted. I'm also a smaller person. I don't have like a ton of fat on me. So doing a cold plunge sometimes is like really stressful for me. Like my body feels worse. My joints will ache. And I think again, this is constitution and learning to read what you can do. As we get older too, we get less brown fat, right? So children have a lot more brown fat. So I actually think children are more resilient to things like cold plunges and doing this kind of stuff because they have like lots of brown fat. But as you get older, you kind of lose that. And you can help that with the cold plunges. But I think it does depend somewhat on your health capacity. And so that's the other thing is that I've noticed in the health sphere, just being in it for 30 years now, is like there just seems to be so many fads and everybody's looking for some magic bullet. It's the same thing as like carnivore.
Yeah.
Is carnivore better than anything? Well, 30 years ago, like, nobody was talking about a carnivore diet. Nobody was even talking about keto diet. The only time I ever learned about a keto diet was in med school with epileptic
No, we
children.
were still in the food pyramid days, right?
Yeah, but even 30 years ago, you know, I was sprouting and I was growing a garden and I was doing yoga and I was exercising and I was like sitting in a sauna and I mean, I was still doing all the same things I do now. I just think now, and maybe it is the social media era, is like everything is extreme, and now it's like bananas are good for you, bananas are bad for you. Like
it's so
cold plunging is
confusing
good
to
for
me.
you. Cold plunging is bad for you. Well, if you want to dig into the research, and remember, bias always plays into these things too. So if you feel amazing when you do cold plunge, you're going to go find the research that shows that cold plunge is amazing. If you feel horrible doing cold plunge, or you knew somebody who had a cardiac event doing a cold plunge, or you're a sickly person who can't really handle that much stress on your body, because that is causing stress, you're going to probably be looking for research that shows, why is this cold plunge so bad for me? What is happening, right? And these are where the biases come in. Now, if you take someone like Huberman, who has the #1 podcast in the world, you know, a health podcast anyways, he's obviously well researched. He has a team of researchers. They're digging into the research and they're looking for human optimization. So if you're looking to optimize yourself, this is going to be something that you're going to want to add to your repertoire, but with a caveat that if you're a super sickly person you probably shouldn't do it, right? Like, but we always hear in the media, there's this like, it's like either it's this or this. There's like no gray area.
Yes.
And, I would say cold plunge, like I enjoy it and sometimes I don't. And does that make it bad? No. And then there's people like Wim Hof, you know, he's a genetic phenom. And we all know genetic phenoms. My husband's a genetic phenom. I mean, but he's not perfect, right? He's got some blood sugar dysregulation. But the guy can like literally hike, not stop. Never stop. Never complain, never has a knee, like doesn't have pain in his body. Like he's just, to me, he's a phenom, because I'm like done. I'm done. Like my knees can't go any far. I'm not going to go any far. I can't do it. We all know people like that in our lives. They're really amazing at certain things. And genetically, they're just built for their doing. And Wim just figured out, wow, he created an entire empire out of what his biology, how unique his biology was. But how many people are built like Wim? And he's trained a lot of people to do it, but I would say that the people that stay with it are the more resilient people who have more of the genetic benefit, like somebody like Wim. This is, I think, become one of the biggest hurdles in healthcare, is trying to navigate all the constant new things that people are trying to fix themselves.
Yeah, and you can find anything you want. If I want to find how bad the carnivore diet is for you, all I would have to do is shape my algorithm to that, and then I would be getting fed vegan everything, right? So,
well, the algorithm reads like it just knows who I am. It knows I'm a 50-year-old menopausal woman. So what do you think I see in my feed all day long? I see menopausal supplements. I see menopausal people. I see plastic surgery, Botox, celebrities who are old getting plastic surgery. Like that's what I see in my feed, because it knows me. And then of course, anything I talk about, it's going to start throwing those things in there.
Yeah.
And remember, you think you are an island among yourself and you come up with your own unique ideas. No. Your phone is feeding you what it knows you want to see. Yeah. And even if you think it's your own unique idea, it's kind of been sculpted to fit into your world.
It's so hard to sift through everything. But here's kind of where I'm coming to on health.
Yeah.
I'll give you just one example. My workout routine. I have actually come to a pretty good place of sustainability, because I feel like if you're just going to do something for a month, that's cool to test your body, learn things, that's great. But I really want to figure out what I can do for a long period of time, 5 years, 10 years, that I can sustain, and it's not just a fad for me. Like the people that go to the gym after New Year's and they last into like the first part of February, and then they go right back to what they were doing. So I want to find the food, like my nutrition, my workout, whatever, my whole life routine. I want to find out things that I can do that are sustainable. And sometimes in order to do that, it's hard because social media is feeding you the extremes. David Goggins, run 30 miles a day. It doesn't matter what it does to your knees because suffering is life. And don't get a mattress. Sleep on the goddamn floor.
Right.
It's like all the extremes, because extremes capture attention, and attention captures the algorithm, and the algorithm pushes it to everybody. So I'm always kind of like trying to like push back and be like, okay, cold plunging is cool. And actually, I feel great when I cold plunge. But I'm not going to do it first thing in the morning every day when I wake up. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to do that. That does not sound like something I'm going to, even if I did, I wouldn't be able to sustain it for more than a week.
I always laugh too, because I take into context all these things. Okay. I live in the Arctic Montana winter. Okay. I'm watching my social media and everybody's like, cold plunge first thing in the morning. You know where these people live? They live in Sarasota. They live in Austin. They live in LA. They live in Mexico. They live in Maui. They're like Laird Hamilton. It's like on, Lanai or Kauai or wherever he lives. Like, it is literally 0 degrees outside. I don't even need to get in a cold plunge. I can walk out and feed my chickens and my goats and literally be in a cold plunge. So this is the other thing, is like, take that into context, because if I lived in Austin all year round, a cold plunge would probably be really easy for me to do first thing in the morning, because it doesn't ever get below 60 degrees or whatever. But like when you live here, it's different. And so maybe in the dead of winter, a cold plunge is not the best thing for me. But in summertime,
how about just a hike out in the cold? How about a hike out in the cold air?
You can just we call it cold exposure. You just need to go outside for like 5 minutes and stand in the blowing wind when it's 10 below, and you can just say you did your cold exposure for the day.
Yeah.
So I think that's the other thing too, is like, take into context, are they living in Costa Rica cold plunging every day? Well, you're not living in Costa Rica cold plunging every day, and maybe that's not what you need to be doing for yourself. Again, this whole aspect of seeing everything everybody in the world is doing,
right.
And I mean, that's kind of how I look at it. And there are people that just have stronger constitutions. I also think men in general, based on hormones and testosterone and growth hormone, you guys are much more, you guys have a lot more heat in your body. You have a lot more heat energy. That's what testosterone does. It drives anabolic activity. And women have that with testosterone and estrogen, but we have that at certain times of the month. So if a woman is going to cold plunge, she might want to consider cold plunging from bleeding to mid-cycle, because that's when her estrogen is going up and would be the highest. And then as progesterone comes up, you become a little more insulin resistant. You get more cravings. You want to nest more. You're not as resilient to exercise. You don't feel as good. You're kind of tired. Maybe you don't need to be cold plunging that part of the month. Maybe you do better cold plunging the first part. So see, women are different than men. And a lot of these influencers are men, and they're talking about it. And I actually got on a women's chat board thing with a company that sells the cold plunges, and it's just for women. And the women stuff, women cold plunging is very different than it is for men, because you guys run on 24-hour hormone cycles. Women run on 28-day hormone cycles. And now that I'm postmenopausal, I'm more like a man. So I could run more on that 24-hour hormone cycle instead of the 28-day hormone cycle. So for me, maybe cold plunging is now easier than it was, when I was in my 30s and 40s. And it would really wipe me out. And that's because I didn't have enough education around it to know that I was doing it at the wrong time of the month or whatever. So that's another thing that I think is unique to women and men.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to sift through with all the amount of information that we're getting. There's no way that you could actually thoughtfully research every fad you're going to get fed. Like, so I feel like,
you know what here's the basics. Here's the basics. So you tell me, Dave, what do you think are the basics? Just the basics. No fads, no diets. Just what do you think
in terms
is the
of everything, or healthy
just
living?
Health.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it is like a well-rounded community, a religious sleep constitution, like the word you use, I like rest, recovery, a exercise 3 to 4 to 5 days a week, but it doesn't have to be extreme David Goggins shit. Eat as much whole foods as possible. Drink very little, if not any alcohol, and a lot of water, and find something you're passionate about that you can focus your life on beyond your friends and family. That would be how I would describe it.
Well, I would say that to me, that's kind of the same prereq. I mean, this is going to be different for everybody, but obviously we need our basic needs met, and we all know what those are, right? And if we had the luxury and the privilege to choose those healthy foods and get whole foods, we should lean more towards that if we want to avoid possible disease, right? And like preventable disease, hopefully. You need to move your body. Like, you're built for movement. So whatever that is, if that's hiking, if that's walking, if that's biking, if that's, David Goggins, like whatever it is, then you need to move your body, because we sit way, 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 way too much.
Yeah.
And that's killing us. And you need to keep moving late as long in life as you can. Don't get complacent because you got a little pain here and there. Like, you have to move. Longevity is exercise is a requirement for longevity. Movement is a necessity. Sleep, so much stuff coming out on how sleep is really kind of the pillar of health. And I've figured that out through my hormone changes. Is like, wow, I did not value sleep like I should have for the freaking most of my adult life. And it really wreaked havoc on me. And now my sleep is like, don't mess up mom's sleep, because it's not going to be pretty. I like sleep. And the other one that I would throw in here, I think community is really important, and we're losing that in today's world, even though we're more connected than ever. And the other thing I would say is pick your relationships wisely. I would say pick your relationships wisely and make sure that your relationships are the number one thing that's nourished in your life besides your body. Because we tend to treat a lot of our relationships like second fiddle, because we are busy and we have to work and we have businesses and we need to make money and we need to pay the bills. We need to be successful. We need to get the degree. We need to whatever. The list goes on and on. But I can tell you that pretty much everybody that I know, that I've experienced in my practice, in my own life, if you do not nurture very close relationships, you're going to be in a world of hurt, because when people don't feel like they're taken care of, they're respected, they're loved, it usually is not a serene environment and for which you can thrive and grow in. And we know that so many people are products of unhappy homes and abuse and neglect. And just people being too young to really know what to do with themselves, and having, again, those relationships we talked about earlier, the drama. And, be the example that if you do have children, or if you want children, be the example that they would look at you and say, that's the kind of relationship that I want. Whether it's with your parents, whether it's with your spouse, and whether it's with your children. I think that's something to be, because I think relationships pretty much control all of our health. If you have a crappy relationship, it's going to be very hard for you to sleep good. It's going to be very hard for you to have the energy to exercise. You're going to choose more unhealthy foods and more unhealthy activities. And you're going to usually torture yourself in all different types of ways. And so I would say, like, pick your relationships wisely. That would be.
It's easier as you get older to get rid of the toxic ones, or and sometimes fix them, but oftentimes it's just walk away from them. I feel like my circle of true friends has gotten smaller but more potent. I mean, I have a lot of. My wife's always like, "You have so many friends." I'm like, "You're right. I have an amazing community of people that are like-minded that I do call friends." But in terms of like actual close friends that I talk to a lot and like know everything about me, it's just a few. And I feel like when you're younger, you're trying to accomplish too much. Like instead of just leaning into the people that actually truly do care about you, not the people that are trying to get something out of you or are using you for your profession or your talents or your money or whatever power you have, the actual ones that are there no matter what stage of life you've been in. I found it's kind of, I've gone full circle back to my high school friends. And I have a lot of friends outside of that too. But like the people that I interact with mostly now are the friends that I've had since I was in preschool. And
it's interesting. I have the same
it's
thing.
kind
I
of
have
funky.
a couple of good friends, and they're from high school. And I didn't really talk to them much for 20 years. And a lot of the friends that I had in the med school and on, I just kind of gravitated away from. I also think that as I've gotten older, I've made a choice. I realized a lot in my life I chose people that this is another thing. Sometimes we choose people based on what our needs are or what we're just used to in our life. I picked a lot of people that were mothering me all the time. I picked a lot of people that were kind of talking down to me all the time, because it was like if I actually showed my worth or I actually showed like how I felt, that I would be set aside. And so I tended to pick people who sort of talked down to me, and I tried to look up to them and do everything right for them. And also people that mothered me, they wanted to be a mother to me. And, again, same thing, kind of telling me what to do, how to think, how to feel. And it was easy for me because I'm the type of person, I think, that I'm kind of in the middle of the road. I can see both sides, and I have friends of all different leanings and stuff. I'm not super opinionated. I get more opinionated the older I get, but I'm not as opinionated as some people I know. And I would say I'm very easy to, when I was younger, I would say I was much easier to, I wanted to be accepted. Let's just put it that way. And so it was easy for people to somewhat manipulate me, especially really strong personalities that were able to, kind of lean me. And what's interesting is my husband is a very strong personality. He may not seem like it because he's quiet, but he's a very strong, opinionated personality. He's kind of always been that way. And we've struggled in a lot of ways because I'm not very opinionated. And I, in a lot of cases, don't know what direction to go. So I feel kind of conflicted all the time, and a lot of that was also because of what I was worried about people thought of me. And should I, even getting into the hunting space, I had a lot of confliction about what are people going to think of me. And he used to be like, well, what are you talking about? Like, I'm a freaking hunter and you're married to me. Like, do you care what I think? And, but his strong personality, it was kind of like, when I been with him for so many years, he was kind of the one I butted heads with the most because he was so opinionated and he wanted me to just have an opinion, and I would butt heads with like, well, I can't do that because, people aren't going to like me. And he would be like, well, who cares if people don't like you? And so we always had this kind of like this tugging and pulling. And as I get older, I've come to realize that it's okay for people to be different, and that you can actually really care about people that are very different than you. I think it's just the way in which you come at how you meet each other in the middle, right? Like, how do you communicate in a way where you listen to each other and you can step yourself inside of somebody else's shoes, but that you are not giving yourself up for somebody else. Like, you are not just like saying, okay, I'll just do what you tell me to do and I'll just be somebody you want me to be. And I think that was kind of my personality. And I've learned as I've gotten older, and Ryan's really helped me with that, to stand up for myself more and to be that person that's like, no, I don't really agree with that. And I'm not okay just sitting here acting like I do agree with that, and whatever. But I'm not a really confrontational person. That's not my nature. So I'm, but I think there's some wisdom that comes with age, with friends, for sure, and relationships. And, the statistics show that there's two people you're going to spend most of the time with in your entire life, over your entire life. One is your spouse, and two is yourself. That you spend a very small portion of your life with your nuclear family as far as your parents when you're a child. And then after the age of 20, that drops off. You may have it different because I know you work with your dad and stuff, but like that drops off quite a bit. after the age of 20. And then you get married, and then you have your own family, and then you spend a lot of time with your children and your spouse in that another 20 years there.
Mm-hmm.
But then your children leave home, and you pretty much don't spend much time with your children after the age of 20, which, when you have young children is really it's like just destroys my heart to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what happens.
Yes.
And then you spend actually more time with your spouse as you get older, because most of all the other time you were working and trying to raise a family, you weren't spending much time together. And then once the children leave and you get older, then you actually start spending more time together.
Yes.
And then you actually spend most of your time alone. And statistics show that can cause some depression in people up to the age of 70. But after the age of 70, people actually are really okay being alone. And so there's two things you have to get really comfortable with. One is who you are and loving yourself and taking care of yourself, because you are going to spend a whole hell of a lot of time by yourself. And you also have to pick the right partner, because you're going to end up spending a lot of time with them at some point. And this is where I think a lot of marriages in midlife fail, because the children leave and then people look at each other and like, oh my God, who are you? And what am I doing with you? And what do we have in common?
Well, and I think about that too, like in current days with the hookup culture and Tinder and these apps and just the way, and I know they can be very successful because I have many friends that met on apps, so I'm not bashing those at all.
Sure. That's, I think, the way people date nowadays. It's like going to the bar when we were or getting a job. When we were younger, it was like you met people through work.
Right. But in terms of like the overall culture of sex first, everything else later, which I don't think that's very new. I mean, that was it's just the way that it's through technology now, as opposed to like what you said. Like when I was in high school, unless you were like really religious and saving yourself for marriage, or in some, random circumstance where it didn't happen, most people like experimented a lot with like not really getting into the nuts and bolts of a relationship. It was like totally like physical attraction and that's it. But I do think about like the hookup culture that we currently have. It's so easy to get sex and this immediate dopamine hit and then just be done with it. And then these relationships that are so often failing, that are just based on like, here's the way I was thinking about it. I was like, in a true relationship or a marriage, like sex is an important part of it. But it's like, if you were to break it up in a pie graph of how much like time you spend having sex or being intimate, and then every other, managing schedules, raising kids, cooking, cleaning, finances, like all the other things, that slice of pie is pretty small. So if your whole relationship
and it gets smaller and smaller as you get older.
So if your whole relationship is based just on that small piece of pie, you're screwed, because at some point when you're like it becomes real, like, and you actually don't like spending time outside of the intimate part with your spouse, you are truly, and I feel bad for relationships like that, because my wife and I, sure, we have our problems and our disagreements and our bickering, but all in all, we actually enjoy spending time around each other, which is pretty valuable, because especially as you say, as you get older and your sex life changes and like all that changes, like the excitement is different. Like you better have some pretty solid foundation, otherwise the relationship's going to fail. And maybe it's the same with friends. Like if maybe you have a friend where, like I had friends that where we would like, we just drank together. That's just what we did. We did nothing else. We just went and got drunk, and we had some fun times, like fun, wild times. And I don't necessarily regret those things, but my true friends were the friends that I had outside of that adrenaline hit, right? Like the ones that were with me through thick and thin. So the point is like you said, choosing those relationships carefully, and make sure that they're based upon principles that will actually stand the test of time, because it can be pretty shaky ground out there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's going to be a complication moving forward with all the stuff we talked about in the beginning, is like how you maintain relationships with so much distraction, and it's difficult. We've been married a long time, and we think back to when we were married, and I mean, we did not have the distractions we have now. You know, the amount of effort you actually have to put into spending time together now and like actually talking is harder. It's harder. And so the kids that are growing up with this is how they meet, this is how they function. And remember, everything always looks better than it is on social media and on Tinder and on YouTube and whatever, right? It's like, it's just like porn. It's never going to be as exciting. Your relationship or your sex is never going to be as exciting as porn. And the reason for that is that porn is created to seriously make you an addict, because you get into a real life relationship and you realize like, oh, wow, I have to work at it. Oh, wait, it's not that easy. Oh, wait, she isn't that into me. Like, no, like this takes some work. And so it's just these things make it harder for us in the real world to connect, because we want the excitement right now, you know? And that gets harder and harder with the ability to just tune in to anything at any time and get your needs met without having to really emotionally connect. I think that I wonder too about people in the future is how is that emotional connection going to be nurtured if you can get that emotional connection met right now. Like,
well, I just saw a picture on Instagram before we jumped on the podcast that said people are going to be having sex with robots within the next 10 years. And then it's
well,
one of the
why not? Because you don't have to, like, the robot's going to love it
do
no
whatever
matter
you
what.
want. Yeah, and exactly.
Oh my god.
Exactly. It's
This is
all very
crazy.
strange. It's all a very strange time. I've
Yikes.
taken so much of your time, but I always enjoy I always enjoy talking to you, Hillary.
What did we actually talk about this podcast? Wow, this is going to be so interesting to listen to.
It was amazing. I always love asking. You spend so much time, like you said, diving into people's traumas and their health issues. And I feel like more than that, though, with your practice, like it's more than just strict health issues. Like you're looking at it holistically, right? And so you get insight into a lot of human behavior that I think is really interesting and fascinating, because it's like I said, as someone who's just a dude who like hunts, plays music, and like I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, and I can't parse all this data and shit that's entering my mind all day. So it's really, I love talking to people like you who have actual experience talking to so many people and seeing how they've solved some of these problems. So I appreciate you always coming on and dumping out your brain and your heart. And it always goes, we always talk about a million different things, but that's what I like. I don't necessarily just want to talk about single things.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk all day about a million things, but I do know I feel really privileged. Again, that word comes out, but that is in such a blessed way that I get to be the witness to so many people's change, and I get to be a part of it. And sometimes all it really takes is just an open conversation. I think a lot of people feel like they're missing that in their life, even with their partner, even with the closest people in their life. They don't feel like they're having true, real, open conversations, and they may not even know how to have that conversation. They don't know where to start. They were never taught that. They never witnessed that. And we all make mistakes. None of us are perfect. All of us, again, like I said, we have traumas, and all of us suffer. And just last week, I had a patient say to me, he said, I can't believe I'm telling you all this stuff. I feel, he said, I don't talk to anybody like this. And I said, I feel that, I said, this is what life is about. The real conversations, not just the fake stuff that we go through our days living and, oh, I'm fine, oh, I'm this, oh, I'm that, ignoring our needs. It's like to sit down and just even have a conversation where somebody sees you, witnesses you, is not judging you. That is, I guess, to me, like such an amazing part of my job, and why I love doing it so much, Yeah.
Well, it's amazing what you do. Let's do this again.
Thank you.
And I'm assuming I'm going to see you and your phantom husband, who I've been trying to get back on the podcast for like 4 months.
He's so podcast. He's just. I can't even get him on my podcast, so don't worry about it. It's not personal. Every time I say the word podcast, he just goes like deer in the headlights, because he's done so many podcasts.
I know.
But our podcast I've slacked on, but I'm going to try to start doing more. I think it's turned into a health podcast at this point.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I get a lot of good feedback on that, and I need to keep building that and working with that. I do love it.
Well, it's not like you have a lack of projects to build, so.
No. I'm trying to slow down in my old age, I'm trying to say, but
I've never seen evidence of that, Hillary. You and Ryan are not slowing down.
I know. Well, actually, we have lots of exciting new things coming. So
I know. I can't wait to. By the way, the few things that you mentioned, I better have some of that on my doorstep so I can try it.
Yeah. Well, the manufacturing, we've been working on it, and there's still some other projects that are kind of a little ways out, but I have about 14 new SKUs dropping.
Oh, wow.
Hopefully in January. We're having a new website built. So we're waiting for that, but we'll have 14 new SKUs, and it's going to be in all very unique products that are not really in this market at all, to help with so many different body systems. I've been working on this for a while, so I'm very excited. Yeah.
Amazing.
That's been my project, that and my women's retreats. So those are the two things that I work on.
Do you have any women's retreats coming up that you want to plug?
So I do. I'm going to have 2-day, I call them day escapes. They're here in Bozeman. One will be in Bozeman in February, and then I have a day escape in April in Big Sky, at a place up in Big Sky. And they are going to be 1-day women's events on hormone health, as well as my friend Scott will be coming in doing all the cooking. We'll have a beautiful meal, and we'll be talking on the topics, all things hormones. Just an educational day. And then I do have my all-inclusive 3.5-day retreat in the Bridgers, September, second weekend of, I think it's the second weekend, 12th through the 15th of September. It's called Healing into Midlife, and it's for perimenopausal and menopausal women. And we are going to have speakers. We're going to have all kinds of events. We're going to have breath work and exercise. We're right on the creek there. And we'll probably be doing some cold plunging. So if that's of any interest to you and you want to come to that, you can go to...
So all of you hunting widows out there that your husband's hunting in September, here's your chance to stick it to him and be like, hey, I'm going to Montana in September.
That's right. And that's that website is Hera, Hera Sante, Sante Retreats. Hera Sante Retreats. That means Queen Health. And that's my new women's health retreat business. And so my future projections are, I'm hoping to do a women's retreat in south of Paris. I have a friend who has a chateau south of Paris that's in a beautiful countryside, and then also Costa Rica. So those are kind of my other destination retreats that I want to do. But right now, that's what I've got going on for 2024.
Amazing. Everybody should go check that out. Thank you so much, Hillary. Appreciate you.
Okay. Thank you,
Have a great day,
Dave.
everybody.
This is fun. Okay. Bye.